and stuff that your body is not programmed to deal with. There's just no way it is. And that's why I feel such empathy and solidarity with the medical community. You know, yes, it's a job, and they go on about how it's a job, but my goodness, they do a very, very hard job every single day.
Prince William was sitting quietly in his office at Kensington Palace, patiently waiting for the results of the routine medical checkups conducted by the expert palace doctors, when one of the doctors hurried over with a grave look on his face. The message he delivered left everyone in the office completely shaken and turned the evening into one full of worry and urgency. There are moments when a country seems to collectively inhale and forget to breathe out. This was one of those moments. It began quietly, the way most national shocks do. No sirens, no headlines at first, just a sudden tightening of silence around Kensington Palace. A silence that felt wrong, the kind that makes people check their phones without knowing why. According to highly placed sources within Kensington Palace, the Prince of Wales was seen pacing the corridors of his residence well past midnight, his face pale and drawn, his hands trembling as he clutched his mobile phone, making call after call to trusted confidants and family members. This isn't the first time the royal family has faced a medical crisis. We remember all too well the health challenges that have plagued the monarchy in recent years. But what makes this particular update so alarming, so different from anything we've witnessed before, is the speed at which it's developed and the severity of what doctors are now saying. Palace insiders who spoke on condition of anonymity described the atmosphere inside Kensington Palace as absolutely suffocating, with staff members moving about in hushed tones, their faces etched with worry. But that's not the most shocking part. Allegedly, the medical team, led by some of the most respected physicians in the United Kingdom, delivered their update during what was supposed to be a routine evening briefing. These are doctors who've served the royal family for decades, individuals who understand the delicate balance between medical necessity and royal protocol. For them to request an urgent meeting, for them to deliver news that would leave a man as strong as Prince William shaken to his core, speaks volumes about the gravity of the situation. What we're learning from sources close to the palace is that this update represents a significant deterioration in the condition of a certain royal family member that was believed to be stable. The medical language being used behind closed doors is reportedly filled with terms that even the most optimistic observers find deeply concerning. The evening of December 15, 2025, began at Kensington Palace much like any other. The winter air bit at the stone walls, and the lights of London glittered in the distance like a handful of scattered diamonds. For Prince William, the Prince of Wales, it was the end of another day spent carrying the weight of a future he never chose, but could never refuse. His mind was likely on his children, on the endless stream of royal duties, on the quiet moments he managed to steal for himself in the churn of a life lived under a microscope. He was due for a routine check-in with the royal medical staff, a simple formality, or so he believed. But soon he found out this was not a formality. The medical team waiting for him was not the calm, reassuring presence he was accustomed to. These were men and women who had served the crown for decades, physicians who understood the delicate unspoken language of royal protocol. For them to request an urgent meeting to break the rhythm of a carefully managed schedule was an act that screamed of a gravity far beyond a routine update. The storm they had been monitoring on the horizon had just arrived, and it was knocking on the palace door. Behind the heavy oak of the consultation room door, William was not met with cautious optimism. He was met with the stark, brutal language of crisis. The update that has since leaked out through palace sources, spoken in hushed, fearful tones, was a majorly devastating blow. A medical condition that the family had been managing, that they believed to be stable, had not just faltered, it had deteriorated with a terrifying and aggressive speed. The test results they had all been waiting for, the ones from December 14th, had come back, and they painted a picture of a reality far more shocking than anyone had dared to imagine. The words spoken in that room, words that have since echoed through the hallowed halls of the monarchy, were chilling. Aggressive progression. Immediate intervention required. Limited treatment window. This was no longer about waiting or hope. This was about a desperate race against a clock that was ticking far too loudly. For the first time in a long time, the unshakable institution of the British royal family was facing a battle it might not win. Panic spread across the palace grounds, and it only got shockingly worse. Although he tried his best to keep calm, those who witnessed Prince William in the hours following that meeting speak of a man who had lost control of his emotions. This was the prince who had faced down the world's press after the unspeakable tragedy of his mother's death. The man who had served his country in the heat of combat, the symbol of resilience and duty. Yet according to one palace staffer, he was left simply shattered. He was seen pacing the corridors of his residence long after midnight, a ghost in his own home, his face pale and drawn, his hands trembling as he clutched his mobile phone, making call after desperate call to the few people in the world he could truly trust. The armor of composure he wore so effortlessly had been breached, pierced by a truth too painful to bear. One staffer described a moment that will haunt them forever, seeing him lean heavily against a cold stone wall, his eyes squeezed shut, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps as the full crushing weight of the doctor's words finally sank in. This was not the future king. This was a husband, a father, a son, being handed the one piece of news he had spent his life praying he would never hear. However, that was not the end of the events. Soon, news leaked out to the public about the unrest in the royal family. The public, without a clear story, has been left to speculate what is going on, especially since a few members of the royal family have had. In recent years, the British royal family has quietly carried a heavy burden of illness that has chipped away at the illusion of invincibility surrounding the crown. King Charles himself has faced ongoing health challenges that forced him to step back from several public duties, reminding the nation that even a reigning monarch is still subject to the limits of the human body. His hospital visits and carefully worded palace statements unsettled a public accustomed to continuity and routine, especially coming so soon after the transition from Queen Elizabeth's long and steady reign. The Queen Consort, Camilla, has also endured periods of exhaustion and recovery that required adjustments behind the scenes, though the palace worked hard to keep these moments from dominating headlines. Together, these health concerns have created a sense that the senior generation of the monarchy is carrying not just the weight of the crown, but the strain of age and vulnerability as well. The younger generation has not been spared either, and this is where public unease has grown sharper. Princess Kate's highly publicized battle with cancer marked a turning point in how the public viewed the royal family's private suffering. Her absence from engagements, her visible physical changes, and the eventual confirmation of her diagnosis stripped away any remaining distance between the monarchy and ordinary families facing life-threatening illness. Prince William was suddenly no longer just the future king managing duties with calm precision, but a husband navigating the crippling fear, uncertainty, and the terrifying possibility of loss. Prince Harry has also spoken openly about his struggles with mental health, shaped by grief and trauma, adding another layer to the picture of a family grappling with both physical and psychological wounds. Taken together, these illnesses and struggles have reshaped the royal narrative from one of polished endurance to one of fragile humanity, making every new medical update feel heavier, more personal, and far more alarming to a nation that senses the ground beneath the monarchy quietly shifting. While the media and the rest of the country are trying hard to find out the member at the end of the royal medical emergency, the atmosphere inside Kensington Palace became, in the words of one insider, absolutely suffocating. The air continued to grow thick with an unspoken dread. Staff members who had spent decades working within those walls moved about in hushed tones, their faces etched with a worry they dared not voice. The normally bustling residence, usually filled with the gentle sounds of children playing and staff going about their duties, fell into an eerie, tense silence. Access to certain wings was restricted, even to longtime employees. In the dead of night, private medical equipment was quietly moved in, transforming the palace's own medical suite from a place of routine checkups into what sources described as a fully equipped mini-hospital, prepared for any and every outcome. They were no longer hoping for the best. They were preparing for the worst. And at the epicenter of this private hell was William, fighting a war on two fronts, one against the medical crisis and another to be a father. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are at an age where the shadows on the walls are more than just shadows. They can feel the tension that crackles in the air. They can see the strain etched around their father's eyes. Sources say William has been battling with every fiber of his being to maintain a bubble of normalcy for them, ensuring they get to school on time, that they have their evening meals together as a family. But the strain is showing. The children can sense that something is terribly, fundamentally wrong, even if they don't yet understand the catastrophic nature of the words being spoken behind closed doors. The physical toll on the Prince of Wales has been immense, a visible testament to the war raging within. He is reportedly barely eating, surviving on little more than coffee and the raw fuel of adrenaline. His face is drawn, his eyes red-rimmed from a sleep that will not come. Friends who have managed to reach him describe a man running on pure willpower, pushing himself to the absolute brink of human endurance because he knows, with chilling certainty, that he has no other choice. He is caught between two worlds, two identities tearing him apart. In one moment, he is the concerned husband and son, his voice breaking with raw emotion as he grills the medical team on treatments, on timelines, on a single, desperate word: hope. In the next, he is the future king, his jaw set with grim determination as he discusses contingency plans and the need to hold the line, to maintain stability for the crown itself. It is a balancing act that would break most people, and there are genuine, deep-seated fears about how much more one man can be expected to take. The shockwave from that single urgent update has reverberated through the entire royal family, fracturing the quiet dignity of their private lives. King Charles, upon hearing the news, immediately cleared his schedule and raced to Kensington Palace, not as a monarch, but as a father. Sources describe an emotional reunion, the king embracing William in a way that moved palace staff to tears, drawing on his own recent health battles to offer a unique blend of paternal comfort and hard-won wisdom. Princess Anne, ever the stoic and fiercely loyal soldier, has been a constant grounding presence, managing the logistical chaos with military precision. Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, have stepped into the breach, Sophie providing a source of stability and comfort for the children when their father is lost in medical consultations and emergency meetings. And from across the Atlantic, Prince Harry, setting aside years of well-documented rift and painful distance, immediately reached out. In a moment of pure, unadulterated family crisis, the titles and the history fell away, leaving only two brothers united in a shared and profound fear. So what happens now? The palace has done what it does best. It has retreated behind a fortress wall of privacy. Official statements are masterpieces of vague diplomacy, speaking only of a medical matter and respectfully requesting understanding and privacy. But behind those ancient walls, the very machinery of the monarchy is pivoting with a quiet urgency. Royal engagements are being quietly cancelled, schedules rearranged. The focus is no longer on public duty, it is on private survival. The medical team's grave concerns have forced them to recommend a treatment protocol that is both aggressive and deeply controversial, according to the revelation of insiders. The palace doctors had recommended procedures that are at the very cutting edge of medicine, that push the boundaries of what is possible, and that come with absolutely no guarantees. And the window to act, the doctors have made brutally clear, is not measured in months or even weeks. It is measured in days. Every single hour matters now. This is no longer just a story about a royal family. It is a deeply human story. It is the story of a family, a husband and a father, facing the kind of news that terrifies us all in the dead of night. It is a stark, humbling reminder that behind the titles, the palaces, and the centuries of gilded tradition, there is a heart that can be broken, a future that can be thrown into terrifying uncertainty, and a struggle that unites us all in our shared vulnerability. The entire United Kingdom, indeed the entire world, is holding its breath. They are watching, waiting, and hoping against hope that the strength of the Prince of Wales and the fierce love of his family will be enough to see them through the darkest of nights. The coming days will not just be critical, they will be everything. However, with the brutal urgency of the news spreading out, the dawn broke over London on December 16th, a pale, grey light that offered no warmth, no comfort. It was the kind of morning that felt like a sigh, a collective holding of breath by a city that sensed something was deeply wrong. Inside Kensington Palace, the night had not brought rest, only a deeper, more profound exhaustion. The emergency meetings had continued until the early hours, a blur of medical jargon, contingency plans, and quiet, heartbreaking conversations. William had not slept. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the doctors' faces, heard the echo of their words, felt the cold dread creeping up his spine. He was standing in the private sitting room, the one overlooking the gardens where his children played. The room was still, the air heavy. A cup of cold, untouched tea sat on the table beside him. He was staring out the window, but he wasn't seeing the frosted grass or the bare branches of the old trees. He was seeing his mother. He was a boy again, walking behind her coffin, the world watching, the sound of the horse's hooves, a drumbeat of agony. The trauma of that loss, a wound he had spent a lifetime carefully tending to, had been ripped open anew. He had spoken of it to a confidant in the dead of night, his voice cracking with a vulnerability he rarely showed. I can't let them go through that," he had whispered, referring to George, Charlotte, and Louis. "The thought of it, it's destroying me." The fear was no longer an abstract concept. It was a living, breathing thing in the room with him. The children, mercifully, were still asleep, shielded for a few more hours from the storm that had engulfed their father. But William knew the charade could not last. He had to face them. He had to be their father, their anchor, even as he felt himself drowning. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind of breath a man takes before stepping into a freezing ocean, and went to wake them. He forced a smile that felt like cracking glass, helped Charlotte with her hair, listened to George talk about a school project, and tickled Louis until he squealed with laughter. In those moments, he was almost convincing, but his eyes, his tired red-rimmed eyes, told a different story. They saw too much, held too much pain. The children, in their intuitive wisdom, did not press him. They simply held his hand a little tighter. By mid-morning, the palace's response was in full swing. It was a masterclass in controlled crisis management, a stark contrast to the raw chaos unfolding in the private apartments. King Charles, after a sleepless night of his own, had begun to make a series of quiet phone calls. He was not just a father, he was the head of the family firm, and he was ensuring the machinery of the monarchy would not grind to a halt. He spoke with the Prime Minister, not revealing the full, terrifying extent of the situation, but informing him that the Prince of Wales would be scaling back all non-essential duties for the foreseeable future, due to a serious family health matter. The phrase was deliberate, designed to convey gravity without inviting a media frenzy. Princess Anne, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of practical energy. She moved through the palace with a purpose that was both intimidating and deeply reassuring. She was the one who calmly informed a junior staffer that their planned holiday was cancelled, not with malice, but with a simple, unarguable fact. The family needs you here now. She was reviewing schedules, delegating responsibilities, and ensuring that the public face of the monarchy remained one of calm continuity. It was her unique gift to absorb the chaos and project order, to be the unyielding rock in a turbulent sea. But the most difficult task fell to William and the medical team. They had to make a decision. The treatment protocol they had discussed was not a single option, but a series of agonizing choices, each with its own terrifying risks and uncertain outcomes. One path was aggressive, a full-scale assault on the condition that offered the highest chance of success but carried the most severe potential side effects. Another was less invasive, but it was a gamble, a prayer that the body might respond on its own, given more time. Time, however, was the one luxury they did not have. In the early afternoon, William gathered with the lead physician, a man who had served the royal family for over 20 years and whose face was a mask of professional sorrow. They were joined by the king. The conversation was quiet, intense, and brutally honest. The doctor laid out the probabilities, the risks, the cold, hard statistics. He did not sugarcoat the reality. He spoke of potential complications, of long recoveries, of the sheer physical and emotional toll the treatment would take. He looked William in the eye and said, "Sir, we need your decision. We cannot wait much longer." William listened, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his knuckles white. He asked questions, his voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil churning within him. He wanted to understand every detail, every potential outcome. He was the soldier again, analyzing the battlefield, weighing the odds. But this time, the life at stake was not that of a stranger in a distant conflict zone. It was the person he loved most in the world, the person who was his other half. After the doctor left, leaving father and son alone in the suffocating silence of the room, King Charles placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Whatever you decide," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "we will face it together, as a family." William nodded, unable to speak. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds where he had played as a boy, where he had watched his own children run and laugh. He thought of the future they were supposed to have, the simple, beautiful future that was now hanging by a thread. The decision was his to make, and it felt like the heaviest burden any man had ever been asked to carry. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was not the Prince of Wales. He was just a man, terrified of losing everything. Staff later revealed that the private meeting had left Charles so shaken that he had once again leaned against the corridor wall, as if the building itself was the only thing holding him upright. This was not a public collapse, but rather an inability to hold one anymore. The kind that happens when no cameras are watching and there is no script to follow. The words of the doctors sounded like history repeating itself. In the past few years, cancer had already taken something from their family and had nearly rewritten their lives. The thought of facing that fight against an illness again, after believing they were moving toward peace, was unbearable. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the atmosphere has continued to deteriorate rapidly. Plans are getting cancelled without explanation. Advisors are being summoned. Specialists were contacted across Europe. Doors have been closed that had really been closed in recent years. On the other hand, Princess Kate, aware of the buzz the issue is causing in the media but too exhausted to make a public appearance, had sensed the change in William before anyone spoke. She had learned how to read the palace the way sailors read weather, and just as always, she acts. Although she has not come out to debunk the speculations that she is unwell, her inability to make a public appearance continues to fuel the speculations. Especially with William doing his best to make sure she does not get dragged into the public's protectorate. He had attempted to shield her, but she knew him too well. Furthermore, news outlets report that the couple has been spending more time together than usual, another hint that all might really not be good for the royals of Kensington Palace. Though the true nature of the crisis remains carefully undisclosed, its impact has been quietly visible in the way the royal family has drawn closer, particularly Charles, William, and Kate, who now appear bound by something deeper than duty or tradition. Private meetings have replaced formal briefings, and moments once reserved for protocol have softened into shared silences, long conversations, and an unmistakable sense of mutual reliance. King Charles, shaped by his own recent health battles, has stepped into a more openly paternal role, offering William not just counsel as monarch, but reassurance as a father who understands fear and uncertainty. William, usually the pillar, has allowed himself to lean, while Kate, resilient despite her own ongoing recovery, has become the emotional anchor holding the family steady. Whatever the crisis may be, it has stripped away distance and hierarchy, leaving behind something rare within the monarchy, a family responding not as symbols of the crown, but as people facing the same fragility they ask the nation to quietly respect. So what are your thoughts on the crisis the royal family is going through right now? Do you think it is as grave as it sounds? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.